Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch.
Hi, and welcome to Straight Talk About God video. I'm Jack. The two trees. We're still working on the almonds, right? Two trees, okay? Tree of life, tree of knowledge, and we add in a little bit about the crucifixion and the Garden of Eden, okay? But just by way of review, the last time we placed the Garden of Eden on Mount Moriah, okay? Where Jacob had his ladder dream, okay? And later on, Abraham set up a sacrifice for an altar for Isaac, right? Same place. And still farther on down the line, God directed Solomon to build the temple. Same place. Well, this being so, it's likely that the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant sat, was the same place where God fellowshiped with Adam and Eve. That's where he met with them. And where the tree of life grew. Okay? When Adam was thrown out of the garden, it was to the east. Probably at least 3,000 feet. Remember, in the camp and out of the camp? Anywhere from 3,000 feet to the ark was holy. A big circle of holy ground. Everything else had to be outside. Murderers were executed outside that area, camp, okay? And when Adam was thrown out of the garden, he was thrown out to the east, straight across to the Mount of Olives to the east, okay? So this is the place where the red heifer was sacrificed, just outside the camp, 3,002 feet, whatever it was, okay? And it's where the crucifixion took place. It has to be. Look, get this picture. God is standing up between his feet, up between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. He's leaning over and reaching down with his arms and holding on to a big area of land that's way up the hill from Jerusalem and way down the hill from the Mount of Olives, and he's got that, and that's his platform for dealing with the Israelites. All of their stuff happens in there. Anything happens on the Mount of Olives affects the people and the things on the Mount of Moriah. Mount Moriah affects Mount of Olives. They're tied together. You can't separate the two. They go together. You can't have a full story about God unless you put both of them together. Okay? So the crucifixion has to happen there. Somewhere in there, right? Those two traditional sites that I've heard about for the crucifixion, they don't meet all of the elements given by God, like outside the camp, right? Were they both outside the camp? Huh? Were either of them in the light, in the sight line, the line of sight from the priest, if he was sitting in the garden? I mean, sitting in the temple? No, right? The sacrifice, the crucifixion has to happen where the red heifer happens, because that's what the red heifer is a symbol of, right? Two trees. Two trees. The book again is the rod of an almond tree in God's master plan. Is that upside down? No, it's not upside down. You can read that. Okay? Look at the tree with 3 people being crucified. That's all you get. Okay, that's the thing. And we're going to add some details about the crucifixion story. And today, there's 2 trees. Now, can we know what kind of trees were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge? Well, God wouldn't be a very nice God if he kept that a secret from us. He's given us plenty of evidence to tell what those trees were. And it's going to break some of our traditions, right? Your eyebrows are going to go up a lot of times here. We can know. There's plenty of evidence to know that's better than just guessing. Well, it could have been. No. Okay. Remember, Moriah equals God, life, the tree of life. Okay? Olives is sin, redemption, the tree of knowing sin. That's a much better name for the tree of knowledge of evil. Never mind that knowledge of evil. It's a tree of sin. The tree of knowing sin. Once you eat from that tree, you'll know what sin is. Adam and Eve knew. They ate. Boom. Oh. God said don't eat it, but we did, and okay, we'll start out with the tree of life. Okay, that's an easy one. It's just a short little place here. Okay, out of all the trees in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil were the only trees singled out by name. The tree of life. Where was the tree of knowledge of evil? Maybe you're right. The tree of life will be seen to have played a central role, both literally and symbolically, in humankind's redemption and spiritual restoration with God. Right. Because the tree of life is what kept them immortal, right? When they got thrown out of the garden, what happened? 2 cherubims guarded the tree of life, basically. Those 2 cherubims made it down through history into the temple. Mount Moriah is God and righteousness, which means that the Ark of the Covenant, God and righteousness, was right there on Mount Moriah. What's on the Ark? 2 cherubims. 2 cherubims guarding life, God's life. On the veil in front of the Holy of Holies, 2 cherubims. Went right down through history. Okay? Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is on Mount Moriah. Okay? In Jerusalem is identified with the site of Jacob's dream. Well, I thought that was Bethel. It was. Because Mount Moriah is like the land of Moriah. It isn't one little specific spot. Okay? It's the whole area. Jerusalem is in there. The temple was in there. Bethel was in there. Okay? And this is out of the Jewish Encyclopedia, so these guys writing this book didn't say, well, we think maybe it was this. It could have been. No, it's a definite thing, right? Jacob's dream. From Genesis 28:19, we know that Mount Moriah was called Bethel at this time. But at an earlier time, it was known as Luz. City of Luz was there, right? In the land of Moriah. Therefore, we know that Bethel and Jerusalem refer to the same general site, not the exact spot, okay? Because Jerusalem was in existence when Jacob had his dream, and if he was in Jerusalem, we would have been told of that. See? Jerusalem and Bethel are in the land area of Moriah. Okay? That happens again. Okay? So we know that the same site refers to the same site, and that site being the Garden of Eden. Oh, so Bethel and Jerusalem are in the garden area, which is in the land area of Eden. Got that? There's confusion in there if you don't know the Bethel. Okay. An essential clue relating to the tree of life is the earliest known name for Mount Moriah. On Mount Moriah, Luz was there, right? Luz. It means almond tree. Almond tree. Okay, that was the tree of life, was an almond tree. Okay? That's what we're doing here. Okay? And it's called the same in Aramaic, Arabic, and Ethiopic. All three languages. It's Luz. Okay? And Luz, according to the Torah anthology, again, an old writing, that they had resources that went back, way back. Okay? Luz was associated with an immense almond tree. Because Luz means almond. Almond tree. Okay? Later, God instructed Solomon to build his house and the temple where he had fellowshiped with Adam and Eve. The Holy of Holies was built directly over the place where the tree of life had grown. Oh, you can't know that. Of course you can. Because God's involved. And it's all about God. And God says, here's where you get life from me. Almond tree, Ark of the Covenant. The Holy of Holies was built directly over the place where the tree of life had grown, and the veil embroidered with the two cherubims placed in front of the Holy of Holies and patterned after the actual cherubims assigned to guard the tree of life. Right? Those cherubims guard life on the top of the ark, in front in the veil. Okay? A fascinating connection may exist between the branch from the tree of life and the rod mentioned several times in the Bible. We talked about this before. This rod had variously referred to as the rod of God, the rod of Moses, Aaron's rod. Right? According to Scripture, it miraculously budded what? Almonds. It had to come from an almond tree, right? And it had Moses' name. Moses had it when he went to Sinai and met the burning bush with God. He had it already, all right? At the time of Adam's expulsion from the garden, God gave the rod to Adam, and it would follow him down through all of the bloodline, right? From Adam, the rod was passed down through the generations of the pure bloodline until it came into possession of Moses, and that's in the Jewish Encyclopedia, right? Interestingly, one story of Moses' rod having come from the tree of life. That's in the Dictionary of Jewish Lore. Tying these various bits of information together, a link to the story of Luz and its unique almond tree emerges. Right? It's all happened in the same place where the temple was going to go. Right? And so we have modern fact of the temple and the ark and all that travels back through history and tells us what was there in the first place. Right? The conclusion drawn by the authors is that the rod of God was actually a branch from the tree of life, which was an almond tree. Period. conclusion. But before we do that, they talk about it here. You know what the menorah is, right? Right? It's that candelabra where they put 7 candles, right? I've seen all kinds of menorahs in my life, okay? Most of them, I guess, 9 out of 10 that I ever seen or were ever made have nothing, just the bare pipes that go up and the candles on the top. Isn't there a menorah as one of the principal items in the temple? Yeah. And that menorah was commissioned by God. And he said, do this, 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 and this, and this, and that's the menorah. Okay? Let me ask you this. If you were commissioned to make a menorah, and on those rods, those branches, you place the 5 most important things that you know about of the United States, because this is going to be a menorah that says, this is the United States. What would you put on those branches? Probably a flag, right? Wrap a flag around, maybe have 3 or 4 of them, going down, whatever. Something that might be like the Constitution or the Great Seal, a picture of George Washington, whatever, okay? Because those are the things that are most important. It would say 1776, different places, right? Of course. Well, when God wants to tell his message, what's the most important thing that he puts on the menorah? The menorah from the temple has almonds, almond leaves and fruit, right? Almond leaves and fruit. Take a look. Okay? Almonds. Because he's telling us that there's, through gold symbolizes God, silver is redemption, God and almonds. God's life comes from almonds, 3. God's almond is representative of life through God. Back and back, over and over. Okay? In light of this conclusion, it is highly significant that the tree of life was represented by the menorah. Torah Anthology, a 7-branched candelabrum made in the form of almond branches, decorated with almond blossoms. Exodus 25, look it up. Moreover, the golden menorah was placed in the holy place of the temple, not the Holy Holies, the holy place of the temple, on Mount Moriah, where the original tree of life would have grown. Right? Sure. Tree of life. What about the tree of knowledge? Again, I really like my designation of the tree of knowledge. It's the tree of knowing sin. Think of it that way. The tree of knowing sin. You eat that, you'll know what sin is. That's what it is. Okay? A tree of knowledge and evil, well, it points to that, but it's not so pointed. It's the tree of knowledge of sin. It is known. What kind of tree was that? This is really easy when you get all these facts together. It is known that one time the land of Jerusalem was very heavily forested with many varieties of trees. Didn't look anything like when Abraham showed up. It was really a wonderful place, right? Paradise. Garden of Eden. Genesis 2 refers in general to the great variety of trees found in the Garden of Eden, and in particular the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Genesis 2:8. And the Lord God planted a garden toward the east in Eden. Eden, most of the whole Middle East. Mesopotamia, down below, Arab, maybe over to Babylon, across the other side of the Dead Sea and all that. Wonderful place, right? Big place, Eden. In that place, God said, this is the place where I'm going to plant the garden. And Jerusalem will wind up in the middle of the garden. Okay? And he placed, here's another question. He placed there the man whom he had formed. Where did God create Adam? We don't know. But after he created Adam, he put him in the garden. Pretty good. Verse 9, and out of the ground the Lord God caused to grow every tree that is pleasing to the sight and good for food, and the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of evil and good and evil. The context is what's in the garden. Okay? So the tree of life, it says, is in the midst of the garden. The tree of knowledge, it doesn't say where it is. It just says it was there in the Garden of Eden, but it doesn't say where. Maybe in the land of Eden. Who knows? This passage refers to the tree of life was located in the midst, quote unquote, midst, or center of the Garden of Eden. On the other hand, the tree of knowledge is merely mentioned without noting a particular location. Oh, what do you mean? Genesis 3:3 says it where it was. However, Genesis 3:3 does define a spot for this equally important tree. Verse 3, ... the tree of knowledge, which is in the middle of the garden. Oh, well, the middle and the midst. So we come away thinking, because we don't do our homework, that the tree of life was here, the tree of knowledge was sitting right next to it. Maybe even some of the branches went together. They were right there. Okay. No, they weren't. They couldn't be. Could they? What's the tree of knowledge? Tree of the knowing sin. Where does sin live? In God's platform. On the other hand, that's verse 3, okay, middle of the garden. Note that the Hebrew word, see, the translators put middle down there. It's the same word as midst, tavek. The Hebrew word tavek, translated as, quote, middle, in verse 3, can also be translated as within, or within the boundaries of, as well as middle or midst. Oh, tree of life can be 3,000 feet away from the tree of sin. Okay. This same Hebrew word appears in Genesis 2:9, where it has been translated midst, as it refers to the location of the tree of life. Apparently, for the sake of consistency, Tavek has been translated as middle or midst in the above passages of the English versions. You see, the translators put down this midst and middle stuff and threw us off. That tree of life can't be sitting next to or anywhere near the tree of sin. Right? The forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil is generally portrayed as an apple. Let me stop here and tell you something about Israelite migrations out of Egypt for the first 250 years of the 500, 400 that they were there, many migrations left Egypt and migrated everywhere, right? Troy, Athens, and Miletus were three of the major city-states that were founded by migrant Israelites, mainly from the tribe of Judah through Zara across the top of the Mediterranean Sea. They were already Israelites, right? Old Israelites. And later on, they had contact with the Israelites when the Israelites got back into the Holy Land, because the tribe of Dan went everywhere. All right? Got that picture? Okay. Some of the stories that were carried to those people were stories of Bible events. Who is the strongest man in the world in the Bible? Samson. Don't the Greeks have Hercules? Yeah. Jason and the Argonauts. Tribe of Dan and the ships. Going for gold in Ophir with Solomon. Here's the apple. Okay? It is known in Greek theology that the apple represents and is associated with Athena. She's the goddess of wisdom. Certain ancient statues of Athena even show her holding an apple in her hand. Therefore, it's probable, never probable, that the notion of an apple being the forbidden fruit of knowledge originated in Greek mythology rather than Hebraic sources. I think it did. But by the time it got to Greece, it was an apple. And maybe Satan was in on that a little bit, set up Athena as the goddess you're supposed to, and it was an apple. Apple was forbidden fruit. In order to determine the actual type of fruit involved, let's examine biblical and Hebraic references. It's easy to do this. It really is. Where was the tree of life? Well, the tree of life was an almond tree. What? Tree of knowledge of evil? That was it. No, come on. Scripture states that they were ashamed. Right. They were ashamed and hastily sewed fig leaves. That's a definite thing. Fig leaves together to hide their nakedness. That's all true. But they weren't ashamed because they were naked. They weren't. They were ashamed because they knew now that they had disobeyed God. How did they know that? How did they know? How could they possibly know that? All God said was, if you eat this apple, you're going to die. The day you eat it, you'll die. And if a day is like 1,000 years to God, then if they lived 900 years, they died in that day, didn't they? Yeah, right. Well, they ate the apple and they knew, but they didn't die. Well, they didn't die. Maybe they made a mistake and they thought it was a different tree that they were going to die. And this tree was okay. And so Eve said, hey, I'm okay. Here, take a bite. This is really good stuff. And all of a sudden, you see, because their DNA was operating at 100% efficiency. Not like our 7 or 8%. 100%. Do you know that your cells produce infrared? Do you know that people have auras? Do you know that there are people who can read auras from people? It's a known fact that's true. It's a physical fact. At 100% production of the DNA, you'd be able to see everybody's aura. It would be all over the place, right? It would be like angels are described of in the Bible. Angel shows up, and he's so bright, it's like the sun. But you can look straight at him and you won't go blind like you do with the sun. Huh? Their aura. He had an aura that was so bright, it was like an angel, right? I believe that, and when they ate of this fruit, their aura went away. And they said, oh, I told you we weren't supposed to disobey God. Foolish woman. He blamed Eve, didn't he? Okay. They sewed fig leaves together. Why fig leaves? It said they hastily, right? What did they didn't go running around the garden, looking for some big leaves and said, oh, well, here's a fig tree. We can, huh? Certainly there had to be many other varieties of leaves to pick from, including even larger ones. And from this we may deduce that the fruit of the tree of knowledge, sin, is actually the fig tree. It's a fig tree. Oh, well, you're not convinced yet, I know. But you will be. You will be. Consistent with the concept of Jerusalem and not Mesopotamia being the Garden of Eden, it's another place where they say, not across the mountains over there in India someplace, another place, is the fact that the fig tree is indigenous to the land of Israel, not Mesopotamia. It doesn't grow up there by itself. All right? It only grows in the Holy Land. Okay? Building upon the concept of Jerusalem as the center of the Garden of Eden, the tree of life grew on Mount Moriah, where the Ark of the Covenant wound up, right? In the exact spot of the Holy of Holies of the temple. Here God had manifested his presence as he fellowshipped with Adam and Eve before they sinned. Given this point of reference, Adam and Eve were expelled east of Mount Moriah to the Mount of Olives. To the Mount of Olives. Right? Adam erected a sacrificial altar after he and Eve sinned. Well, you remember Cain and Abel? It doesn't say anything. They offered a sacrifice to God. And God said, that's a good one, that's a bad one. How did they know? What were they told? Adam built an altar to sacrifice to God, to make up for his sin, right? And Cain and Abel came and sacrificed on the same altar. One did a lamb and one did fruit, right? The authors believe that this altar was placed on the summit of the Mount of Olives, sacrifice for sin, where the red heifer was sacrificed, eventually becoming the place of all sin sacrifices were burned. This site could be considered analogous to the brazen altar of the tabernacle. Brazen altar, brass, is always judgment. Gold is God, silver is redemption, brass is judgment. Right? The brazen altar of the tabernacle, where sin sacrifices were burned. Right? Inside the Holy of Holies of the tabernacle or the temple were the Ark of the Covenant, covered by the mercy seat, where God manifested his presence in the In the garden, the tree of life grew in the exact same spot and where God manifested his presence to Adam and Eve. The Holy of Holies also marks the future throne of Messiah Yeshua, when he returns to set up his millennial kingdom on the earth. Right? Of course, it would have to be. Huh? It isn't in New York, London, right? It's in God's holy place where he's his platform for. Significantly, when Yeshua entered the city of Jerusalem on the week of the Passover, the last week he was going to be killed, right? The day before, they left Jerusalem and went to visit and stay that night with Mary Magdalene, Lazarus, her brother, and Martha, her sister, over in Bethany. And Bethany is southeast of Jerusalem, and you have to go over the Mount of Olives and down the Mount of Olives into the city and in the temple. Okay? They left Bethany, went up the Mount of Olives, boom. Christ says, there's a fig tree. He singled out a particular fig tree and cursed it. You remember that. What did it mean? What did it mean? He stated that he never wanted anybody to eat a fruit of that again. Mark 11. Right? Verse 13. And seeing at a distance a fig tree in leaf, he went, if perhaps he would find anything on it. Because when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season of figs. Oh, he didn't know that. Of course he knew that. He lived there for 12 years before he left, right? He knew that. This is all symbolic. And he's telling us something about a fig tree, isn't he? Huh? And he answered and he said unto it, may no one ever eat fruit of you again. Of course Yeshua knew that it was too early for ripe fruit. Huh? His cursing of the fig tree was purely symbolic in nature. The authors believe that Yeshua cursed the type of tree whereby sin had entered the world. The tree of sin. Huh? A fig tree. The authors also believe that the reason why Yeshua singled out this particular fig tree was because it grew in the same place as the fig tree which Adam and Eve ate from when they committed the first sin. They were on the Mount of Olives. The fig tree he cursed was on the Mount of Olives, where it first came into the world, and where he would shed his blood in atonement for all sin. Right? Of course. That's where the crucifixion took place. On the tree of knowledge. The tree of life, the almond tree that David planted with the rod. Okay. Conclusion. Given the insight of the biblical feast days, God ordained represent a prophetic timetable. It's virtually assured that Yeshua's second coming will coincide with one of those feast day periods. Hey, let me go over that briefly. The feast days, like everything God orders, has to do with Christ. It's the life of Christ. Okay? First of all, we know positively that he was born on Rosh Hashanah. Okay? After his birth, the feast days tell what happens to him. It's his outline for life. Once he's alive, he will be crucified, given up, sacrificed on Passover. He did that. On unleavened bread, he'll be put in the tomb. On first fruits feast, he will come out of the tomb, which he did on Sunday morning at 6:01 Saturday night, right? And then nothing happened with Jesus until he went to heaven and his spirit descended. His spirit descended on Pentecost. The second coming, supposedly, will be on Rosh Hashanah. At the second coming, he will off all the bad guys in Armageddon. Okay? And after Armageddon, he will go into tabernacles and be the king of the earth for 1,000 years. It's perfect. Right? So it will coincide with one of those feast day periods. Since the Jerusalem fig ripens in late September, early October, which is when Rosh Hashanah happens, and then Yom Kippur, and then Tabernacles, all the way for 10 or 15 days. Okay? It seems probable that the Lord will return for his bride, believers in the body, during one of the fall festivals, Rosh Hashanah or Sukkoth, Tabernacles. Right? However, here's another mystery cleared up. Oh, you can't tell when second coming is going to happen. Nobody knows the day or the hour. Jesus said so. Well, Jesus didn't lie, right? But Rosh Hashanah and Tabernacles don't happen in one day. There's 2 days involved in there. And you won't know until it happens what day it's going to be. You know? If it's on Rosh Hashanah, will it be on Tuesday or will it be Monday the day before? No one knows the day or the hour because those festivals don't have one single possible day. Okay? So as usual, even the smallest details fit perfectly into the stuff that God does. And it's all about life from him through Jesus. The whole Bible that's what it's about. It's about life with God, and Jesus is the main messenger of that truth. Okay? Look at it this way. If God set up a restaurant, he set up a restaurant, the number of toothpicks in the holder at the cash register would be a number that would point to Christ. It would. It really would. See? You can't find all this stuff on the natural level. See, God is real. He's as real as anybody you've ever talked to. Okay? And he keeps his word, unlike most of the people you ever talked to. If he wasn't, then none of this stuff would be there. It'd all be random stuff. Moriah is God and life. Olives is sin, redemption. Right? I just learned 2 weeks ago from this time here where the rabbis are planning their temple. I mean, for 10 or 15 years, they've been planning the temple, to build a temple, rebuild the temple. They got together all of the tables and the candelabras and the altars and all the priest's clothing. It's all ready to go. They're all ready to whatever time it is that they decide, they're ready to step up and get in there. I also read in one account that the Temple Mount, the Temple Mount is big enough where that temple that they're going to build will fit on there. They don't have to destroy the Dome of the Rock. Is where the Islam is worshipped, right? But this is what I found out a couple of weeks ago. Okay? The rabbis, it was about the red heifer because they've got 5 of them ready to go. 5 red heifers. This is not an easy thing to do, to manufacture these red heifers. They got 5 of them ready to go, and they're ready to build up their... Now, they don't believe the New Testament. So, they don't have any problem building the temple where they want to build it. Where are they going to build the temple? Mount of Olives. Mount of Olives. And it makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Because who's gonna mess up that temple that they build? The Antichrist. After 3.5 years of being a good guy, he becomes the bad guy that he really is. He goes into the temple and he says, you don't sacrifice anymore. You don't do any oblations anymore. I am God. That's the biggest blasphemy in the whole world of history, right? The worst rebel saying that he is really God, right? Well, they don't recognize that because they don't recognize Revelation and some of the other things where it says that the Antichrist is going to come into the temple and say he's God. So they can build it on Mount of Olives where sin is. Next time, number 4, that's going to be not 2 trees, but it's going to be 2 Passovers. 2 Passovers. There were 2 Passovers? Right. 1, well, tune in. You'll find out, okay? Thanks a lot for watching. God bless.